Hi, friends. Welcome to episode 102. It's the end of October. It's Halloween and Diwali, if you're into that. And tomorrow, Sunday, the clocks go forward, so we get an extra hour in bed. What is really great is next week is half-term holiday. However, the temperature is now plunging, as well as being pitch black outside. We're now down to single figures in terms of the temperature outside in the morning, or hopefully it might get a bit warmer today. So anyway, next week kids are off, so I'll have a little bit more time, maybe an extra couple of days, to come up here and try and catch up with some of the stuff I really wanted to do over the summer period. I really had hoped to have been putting the panels back on by now, but we're not that far off, in fairness. I might actually have an opportunity this weekend, or at least maybe over this week, to start putting the panels back on the back of the bus, although I'm still waiting for stuff for the side of the bus. So anyway, so there we are. So look, we'll hang on to that nice little picture that I do of outside when the sun comes up, and I'll tell you what I really got done rather than what I hope to get done at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning in a fairly chilly barn.
Yep, right, the weather is clearly deteriorating. Anyway, in this episode, what we got coming up for you is I try and put the conduit on, and will it work? Who knows? I also try to improve the letters on the registration plate because they're a bit of an odd colour, really, all of them. So I've tried to make them less contrasting. And also in this episode, we managed to do a little bit of work on the nearside wheelarch. I nearly said offside there, I did that ages ago. And we've still got some more dents that keep appearing on that back corner panel. So that's this edition. And right, well, let's kick off with the first thing. Okay, so let's start with a quick flashback to last week. And the back of the bus is looking really scruffy in this picture, isn't it? That's all my, most of it's recycled masking paper, actually, but it does look terrible. And I really do want to get this back into its nice green coat of paint in order that I can get those lower panels on. The lower panels are made, as you're probably aware if you've seen previous editions of this. I've also done the little white panel that sits underneath the rear destination box. That's done. And the corner wraparounds were also done last week as well. Unfortunately, I'm not having a great deal of success with the panels on the back of the bus. The existing original advert panels, because they not only are they curved, but they also taper in towards the top. So I decided, rather than replace them, I would just reuse the old ones, although they've been a little bit bashed about. So I spent quite a lot of time filling them. The one on the offside is an absolute pain, and I'll come to that later on. But anyway, I blew some green over the roof last Saturday. I put one coat on. I didn't have enough time actually to follow the instructions I'd been given, and the instructions were put the first coat on and then come back about 10 minutes later and whap another coat of paint on it. I just didn't have time, so I just did that roof section you see up the top there, and came back on Sunday morning and put another coat on, and it went on really well. But nonetheless, following the instructions I was given to put another coat of paint on, I then put a second coat of paint around that blind box and then over those advert panels, and it went horrible. It went like sort of anti-skid on the way up to a traffic light or something. It was absolutely awful. So where you see all of that variation in colours on that rear panel, that is just purely where it's just gone bad. So the first thing I had to do Saturday was to get up the barn and start making a job of rubbing it all back down again, which is a bit of a shame, but it does put another coat of paint on it, so I'm not going to get too upset about it. But it also, that green, revealed some right horrors on that offside panel. So after that little disaster, I had a chat with Alan, who absolutely adores this particular type of paint, and I just can't get on with it, but never mind. So anyway, I had a chat with Alan, and Alan Brown said, look, what you need to do perhaps is just do a panel at a time, because by the time I'd done the roof with a first coat, and then that obviously was done Saturday, so that was easy to do. And then Sunday I came back, put another coat of paint on, by which time obviously it completely dried. And that was not what I was told to do. I was told, as I said earlier on, to do, one coat about 8 to 10 minutes after I put the first coat on. Well, it's actually practically impossible for me to do that because of the size of the bus, and I have to move those ladders around that you see there, and that takes 3 or 4 minutes because it's an absolute tight squeeze down the side of the bus, and you have to do this sort of like forwards and backwards, and drag the ladder around eventually to avoid scratching the paintwork on the side of the bus. But it is really tight getting the ladder around there, so it takes time, as a result of which by the time I've come to put that second coat on, all hell breaks loose. So Alan suggested masking the bus up, so the panels I want to keep, like the roof, not going to put any more on that, and then do each of the panels separately, and that's exactly what I'll do, and I'll give that a try. But sadly it means I've also got to rub the whole thing down again, apart from the roof, obviously the bits I'm keeping, and this paint also is a bit of a, I don't know, I have trouble with this paint rubbing it down. It doesn't rub down nicely, whereas the old oil-based paint I used to use, it's absolutely beautiful when it rubs down. So anyway, let's have a quick look. While I'm doing this, I'll have a quick look at this offside panel. Right, so here is that offside panel. It is actually been bedeviled with problems. Now, the green paint, one of the good things about it, before it took on the anti-skid appearance you saw earlier on, is that it will actually show up any more dents. I couldn't see the dents when it was sort of in aluminium and bits of filler all over the place, just couldn't see them. But now it was green and slightly glossy for a very short while. I could then see that it needed further work. So here is a result of that further work. I'm just looking at that picture. Actually, it looks like a sort of a semi-smiley face, isn't it? 2 eyes, a nose, and just down the corner there a bit of a mouth. But I certainly wasn't smiling when I'd keep putting more filler on it. But there you go. It's got to be done. And Mark popped in on Saturday just after I'd done that. And Mark said, "Well, you're putting adverts on it anyway, aren't you? Does it really matter?" But yeah, we are gonna put adverts on it. Yeah, will. But I do want to try and get rid of some of those dents, and they just keep coming back. I know I joked last time, like someone comes around in the middle of the night and just goes tap, tap, tap on the panel and goes, "That'll keep him happy." Not. And of course, the joys of rubbing it down and putting filler in is you take it back to the aluminium and you've got to put primer back on it again. This primer actually doesn't react with the paint. I'm really quite pleased with that because most cellulose primers go absolutely bonkers when you put them over oil-based paint. But this hasn't reacted, so it's in a tin. So, yeah, well done. However, I did need to put that horrible old primer stuff on that buggered my gun up last week, and I was in a bit of a dilemma about that, and I'll come to that later on. We'll do some other stuff, we'll come to that later on. Phew, we can get on with something else, something slightly different from rubbing down the back panels to rubbing down the wheelarch. If you want to know, by the way, it's a little bit of a minor point, this is the sound wound down to 2% of the actual sound. I probably should have used ear defenders on this. This is the inner wheelarch on the near side of the bus, and I have washed it off umpteen times, but I still keep finding bits of sort of scallywag stuff on there. In fact, I even found a stone jammed in something there as well. It's a tiny little stone. But anyway, right, so this device that I'm using here it's not the angle grinder. I've got a special sanding disc on it. Because this is curved, I can't use any of my regular tools like my DA or stuff like that. The only thing you could use really is a wire brush on it. But this is far more effective. And funny enough, just doing this one wheelarch, I managed to completely use one of those sanding discs. So yeah, so that's the purpose. And the idea is, as I say, get off all the flaky bits of old paint and stuff like that. There's no point in turning this into almost brand new condition, but they're quite robust. And this one, funny enough, is in better condition than the one that was on the offside. I did the offside long before I started doing these films. Thankfully for you guys and girls. So yeah, I did that, and that one's actually come up quite nice. So the plan of action with this one is to get this into black at some point. I'm going to keep the chassis rail as silver because I think that's how they were. And these arches, if you have a look in there, you can just about see underneath that silver that's been put on some time back. I didn't spray that myself, but you can just about see there's old silver paint, and that was, I think, done at Northfleet Garage in about 1977 when they were refurbishing the bus. But underneath, as you can see, that silver comes off, it's black. So I'm going to try and keep to that original sort of standard, as it were. Right, it's Sunday morning and I've got a little bit of a dilemma. It's also pretty cold up here today. It's only 3 degrees above freezing. Ooh. Anyway, right, to get on with it, yesterday I rubbed down the back of the bus. Remember, if you saw the previous episode, I wasn't very happy with the paint finish, so I rubbed it all down again yesterday. I found some more dents on that offside corner advert panel, which required more filling. So filled them, and now I think it requires a little bit more of that primer filler. Remember that stuff from a previous episode, back when it was episode 100, where I managed to wreck my spray gun with it. Now I've been doing the wheelarch. Now this is what the dilemma comes in. I've been rubbing down the wheelarch and getting all the loose paint off of that, and I am going to try and use that primer filler on the wheelarch. And if I'm going to do it on the wheelarch, then I might as well use that on that offside panel as well. However, it's going to push me back a little bit, putting the green on. And I'm a bit limited on light this as the clocks went back this morning. So it's going to get dark, probably around 5:30. And under my current plan, I need to spend probably another couple of hours on that inner rear wheelarch before I can even start to put any paint on it. And in that case, if I'm going to do that, then I'm going to use that primer filler for that back corner panel. So I need to mask that up as well and get that ready. However, that needs to dry, although it's a cellulose-based material, so it might dry fairly quickly. And once that's dry, rub it down and then apply the top coat. But I'm going to be really tight on time today, and the light, yeah, it's not looking too good at the moment. So anyway, never mind. We'll push on and we'll see what I actually managed to get to do on Sunday. It's cold. Never mind. Right, as you might have gathered, I wasn't feeling too confident on Sunday morning with this. I did need to spend probably about another hour or so in this wheelarch, scraping off the remainder of the flaky paint. Like I said earlier on in the previous one, on the Saturday bit, I'm not looking to make this sort of brand new standard. I think, you know, it's got battered with stones and all sorts of other bits of detritus. So the best I can do really is get all the old flaking paint off and whap some paint over it. The paint that you see in the wheelarch is that awful paint I used the other day that blocked my spray gun up. I kind of took a deep breath and picked up one of my sort of older gravity feed guns. The problem with the gravity feed spray guns is they've got the paint actually sits on top of the spray nozzle, so you've got about 8 inches or so above the spray gun. And whereas the other gun, the one that works off, is like a suction one, and the actual paint sits below the spray head, which means you can spray in upside down virtually with the other one. But so the other pot wasn't as good, so I had to leave that little gap there because it was starting to splatter paint everywhere. So anyway, that's the wheelarch progressing along. So hopefully I'll manage to get another coat of paint on this on Sunday, and then that'll be ready for the next weekend. I'll slap some black on it, and hopefully I can tick that little one off. Meanwhile, should we do something a little bit more fun? Okay, there was this little thing. You haven't seen both the front plate and the rear plate together. The transfers that I managed to get from my friends at Squirrel had a very slight colour variation in them. If you notice that the L, the Y, the 8 are different, slightly different from the R and the 0. So what I wanted to do was just to reduce that contrast a little bit. So I came up with a Coconani scheme of putting a little bit of varnish on it, which takes that brightness on the LY and the 8 and the 8 down a little bit. So that was the project. Now the other thing you might notice on the rear plate, there's 3 holes just underneath the registration plate, and that is for the reflector disc. Now Mark was out and about at a bus rally recently and managed to acquire 2 fairly decent ones for me, so I'm going to be fitting them at some point. So there's one on this side, there's one on the near side. So anyway, let's get on with this little project. Right, so what I'm going to do is, in an attempt to try and dull down the difference between all those letters, I'm going to use this varnish. In that tray there is some very nice varnish. It's ancient, but it's really nice varnish. But what you might notice, it's already got the right sort of straw coloured appearance to it, because the varnish is not entirely clear, it's actually slightly yellowy, and I thought that might actually really help take the contrast down. So what I need to do now is to test it. So this is my first attempt, is to test out to see what it looks like when I put the varnish on the lettering. A lot of these letters were actually varnished back in again, these are not, but no, it's not working. So what I've done is I'm using, this is canary yellow, the same stuff that was used on the RMs and the RTs and stuff like that when they painted them at London Country into the little mid-band, became canary yellow. So this is obviously an original can of that. I think it's probably very much the same colour that was used on DMS doors as well. So yeah, that's a very ancient pot of paint, so don't lose it. I'll kick it over. So anyway, so I've mixed in a very small amount of this yellow, and then I'm going to apply it to the plate and see how we get on, whether it actually improves sort of dulling down that varnish a little bit. Well, I think it made a limited improvement, not a huge amount, but it still looks a bit odd. Those letters still look a little bit blue, and the O looks a little bit yellowy. Never mind, it was worth the experiment, so I'm not going to repeat it, I'll just leave it as it is. But I wanted to get the rear plate done because obviously while it's in this condition, while it's actually off the bus, you can manoeuvre it and do all sorts of things with it. So when it's on the bus, it means I've got to do this laying on the floor. I don't really want to be doing that laying on the floor, to be quite honest with you. I've got enough things to do laying on the floor. Oh, talking of which, there's a nice little segue. That pipe that was underneath the bus, my colleague at work has done a good job on it, so I'm going to try and refit it. Right, so let's kick off with what we're looking at. This is some replacement conduit I bought. It's stainless steel. It fits very snugly over the top of part of the remaining conduit, and the idea is it carries the main sort of, I would describe as high amperage cables, the one that, the two rather, that run from the batteries to the front of the bus and supply the starter motor, and you know, I know them fed by the alternator. So they're quite heavy duty cables. Now this conduit is stainless steel, and when I was trying to fold it on that corner, it just kept compressing the pipe, so I couldn't get the new cables through. So I'm very grateful to a colleague at work who took on the project of welding this little bit on the head there. Notice there's a small plate which is malingering at the top there. That had to be positioned and then welded in place. So what we had to do was to get the shape right, and then once I got the shape right and we knew the cables would go through, I then took it back to work with markings on the pipe to show where that plate needs to be welded. So I'm very grateful for my colleague for doing that, but this is what the original conduit looked like. So it pretty much totally rotted out. In fact, this is actually the end of it, and there was about 2.5 foot missing. Now the cabling I'm using on the RT is the type of cabling that you find underneath a modern bus, and it's not in conduit. So I could have took the decision to simply chop all this rusty stuff off, and then I was going to say now, that's not the right word, is it? But then attach the cabling to the bottom of the bus and then up through the floor. So they'll disappear through the floor at this point. So this is where the cable emerges into the bus and then goes over the wheelarch. The red stuff you see there, that's some sort of, it's a bit like a hose really. It's protective covering for the original cables. And then there's a little plate in the floor which you can just about see there. Unfortunately, that's rotted away a little bit on the corner. So what I'm going to do is I've managed to recycle that and tidy it up a little bit, and I'm going to bolt it back through the remainder of the floor. But this is where it comes through, and one of the reasons is you may notice I've left panels off in strategic places on the bus. And as much as I'd like to put them back, I wouldn't be able to get my hand in here because I have to put my hand in this space, as you'll see later on. But this is the space just below the bench seat as it arrives on the floor of the main sort of lower saloon of the bus. So that's where that is. Right, before we get to do that though, I need to do this little task. This is a sort of shrink wrap which goes around the outside of the cable, and what you do is you heat it up and it shrinks nice and neatly onto the cable. And what I've done is I've worked out where the cable should come out through the wheelarch. And the idea is that you saw earlier on that red hose that was on the outside, the protective material on the outside of the cable. So what I've done is I've extended the conduit a little bit, so it gives it a little bit more protection, hopefully. And then this stuff, which give it protection as it enters out from the conduit and then around the wheelarch. So that's the plan. So I've got to get this on before I start this little part of the project.
This bit has been hanging around for far too long. You might remember from some of the previous ones, this section that was under the bus had rotted out completely. So I went out and bought this stainless steel tubing. Very nice, except it was an absolute pain to get it into that shape. So you might notice we've had to weld a bit on there to get around that corner. Now, on the floor here, that's the main cable. At the point where it comes out here, I've widened this up just a little bit, and I've put some protective covering on the cable to make sure it doesn't chafe. The only thing I'm not sure about is now I've now made the cable bigger, whether it's actually going to fit through this corner. So let's see. The other thing is a very minor thing. I have to put the cables in the right way round, and we can't have them kinking up in there. So let's get this cable straight first. There's a bit too much of it, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, I've left a lot of extra on there. Right, let's go back here. The cable actually is quite heavy, which is why I've put a secondary bracket just underneath. It's a lot heavier than the old cabling. It's full copper. Right, so the positive cable, the red one, has to be on my right, and it can't cross over. Let's make sure it's not crossed over there, because we can't have a kink in it. No, that's good. Yeah, that's great. Right. Get off. That's it. I had this outside, this pipe. I painted this yesterday with hammerite, and I put another coat on this morning because it was looking a bit thin. So I've had it outside in the sun, well, what there is of it. Yeah, look, that's the corner. Yeah, got it. That's it. There you go. Well, only another 15 feet to go. I'll do one at a time, I think. Yeah, it's easier one at a time. So they have to go in at this order because you can't cross them over. It's not enough space in the conduit for the cables to cross over. So if you get it wrong, you got to do it all again. Right, now, this is where I've widened it up. This might be the bad moment. Come on. Let's see. We can get that widened bit out through here. No, it's stuck now. Right. Do want this to go through. So only got to go through. It's going there. It's coming through. Right, let's do it this way. Sometimes you want someone with you, really. It's coming through. Oh yeah, definitely coming through. Might have to paint this again. We've got about a foot to go, and it doesn't seem to want to have it now. Might be time to put the kettle on, I think.
Phew. So after all that effort and having got the cables into the conduit, I've now threaded it through the floor, threaded it over the top of the wheelarch, and now all I've got to do is a simple task of putting this bit of conduit in. You might have noticed by the tone of my voice when I use the word simple, it wasn't going to turn out to be simple at all. It was going to be a right pain in the backside. Just in that wheelarch, just up inside there, is a little plate which is supposed to sit on the top. So you've got the plate that's already on that conduit, as you can probably see, and I've got it to slide over the top of the old bit of conduit. You can see there's a little bit of space there, a little bit of area for manoeuvre, so it is able to slide down it without too much trouble, but unfortunately the little plate that sits inside the bus was going to be an absolute pain in the backside. So in theory, what's supposed to happen is that the plate that we've welded onto the top of the conduit and the little plate that's inside there, which is currently mobile, is supposed to join on with the conduit, and it holds the conduit in place. Now at the top of shot you can see I've got that little bit of wood there. That is a additional support for the conduit because that cabling is far heavier than the stuff that went in there previously. That extra black stuff is what you saw me sort of, I don't know, heat shrinking onto the original cable, and that is where it goes over the wheelarch. And then that little bit that you see just above the plate, that is additional. That was never there. The conduit actually stopped at that little plate, and then the cables were on their own when they were inside the bus. So I put that there just to protect the cables a little bit more. So anyway, unfortunately, it was Sunday, it was pushing on, and I was getting really cheesed off with this, and I was starting to get to a point where you see the I'm trying to manoeuvre the plate into place. Look, see that? But it just wasn't going to have it. So time was pushing on Sunday, and I was getting really frustrated with it. And I thought, if I carry on fiddling about with this for another hour, it's still not going to go, and I'm going to end up causing some damage. So I decided, sod it, I'll call it a day. Right, and what with the following week being a school holiday is an opportunity to get up and spend another couple of days laying on the floor in the freezing cold, trying to stick this damn conduit back in. But yeah, I'm going to pack up here and then clear off home. So thanks very much for watching this episode. Yeah, we got a few things done. It just goes to show how slow this progress is and how horrible some of this work is, especially laying upside down in the shed. Oh, I've almost got it to go there, but no, spoiler alert, it didn't go, it didn't work. So thank you very much. If you're interested anymore, YouTube is going to recommend another one to watch. Anyway, looking forward to doing the next one, episode 103, which will be me up the barn during the school holiday. See you next time, friends. Cheers, bye.